Hi, this is Ron Najafi. I'm CEO of Emery Pharma. In our next video, we're doing something exciting. We're taking material that's already on our YouTube channel, on our website, that are fact-based, science-based, and we're using an AI tool to break it down into an understandable, bite-sized manner that's engaging and hopefully will enhance your understanding. I hope you enjoy it.
You've been doing some fascinating research on food and mental health, and let me tell you, it's not just about eating your veggies.
It really isn't.
We're going deep into how what we eat impacts everything from depression and anxiety to even things like dementia.
That's right. You know, it's interesting because for years, the focus in mental health has been on psychological and social factors.
Right.
But now we're starting to understand the huge impact of food on the brain, thanks to people like Dr. Robert Lustig. He's done a ton of work on metabolic health and how it connects to mental health.
Okay, so what's the main argument here?
Well, Dr. Lustig basically says a lot of the same processes that affect our physical health, like insulin resistance and inflammation, even how our cells create energy, they all directly impact our brains too.
Oh, wow.
It makes you wonder if just changing what we eat could actually help with some mental health conditions.
And that's what we're going to really explore in this deep dive.
Absolutely.
Could food be a form of therapy?
It's a fascinating question.
And I know this isn't just about keto, but it seems like a good starting point.
The ketogenic diet is a really great example of how food can affect the brain,
Okay,
even though it's not a cure-all, you know?
sure.
Way back in the 1920s, doctors noticed something interesting. Ketogenic diets seem to help patients with seizures.
Yeah, I remember reading about that. It had something to do with ketones.
You got it. They observed that when patients had both diabetes and seizures, if they went into diabetic ketoacidosis, their seizures often stopped.
Okay.
And in ketoacidosis, the body breaks down fat for energy instead of glucose, and it produces ketones.
Ketoacidosis, though, that sounds kind of dangerous.
Oh, it definitely can be. It's a serious complication of diabetes. But this observation about seizure stopping led to the idea of using a ketogenic diet as therapy.
Okay, so cutting out most carbs and eating more fat.
Exactly. You can induce a state of ketosis where your body relies on ketones for fuel.
And the thing about ketones is they don't need insulin to get into the brain, right? And that's a big deal for conditions like Alzheimer's, where insulin resistance in the brain is a major issue.
You're right on the money there. And then you have people like Dr. Christopher Palmer at Harvard. He's using ketogenic diets to treat things like bipolar disorder and schizophrenia.
Wow, that's amazing.
It really is. It feels like we're just starting to scratch the surface of how food can impact mental health.
Okay, so it's like the ketogenic diet is showing us that we can manipulate food to address these complex conditions.
In a way, yes, but we're not talking about some sci-fi frankenfood here.
Right, of course not.
It's more about understanding how food is already manipulated, both in good and bad ways.
I see what you mean.
Like, we fortify food with vitamins,
Right.
remove allergens for people, and adjust the ratios of carbs, protein, and fat to create things like low-carb or vegan diets.
And then there's the whole world of the microbiome. You know, all those bacteria living in our gut.
Absolutely. The gut-brain axis is a huge area of research now, for good reason.
It's amazing to think about what's happening in our gut.
It really is. The microbiome plays a role in so many things, from digestion and immunity to how our brains develop and function.
It's wild. But speaking of things that impact our gut and our brains, we have to talk about sugar.
Ah, yes, sugar, the double-edged sword.
That's where Dr. Lustig's work comes in. He really challenges those old ideas that a calorie is a calorie and that all sugars are the same.
Yeah, he's right to challenge that glucose, the main energy source for our bodies, and fructose, which is mostly processed by the liver. They have very different metabolic pathways.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that our brains convert glucose to fructose even if we don't eat fructose directly.
So our brains actually make it.
Exactly. We need some fructose, but problems start when we eat too much of it.
Okay, so that's where the problems with the sugar start, especially for our brains.
Right, and research is showing that excess fructose is linked to a bunch of negative effects.
Such as?
Well, for one, it can cause mitochondrial dysfunction.
Mitochondrial dysfunction.
Yeah, so mitochondria, they're like tiny power plants inside our cells producing energy. Okay.
And fructose can interfere with this process, leading to less energy and more oxidative stress.
It's like fructose is messing with our cell's energy system.
Exactly. And remember that enzyme AMPK we talked about earlier that's crucial for mitochondrial health?
Yeah.
Well, fructose can inhibit it too.
Oh, wow. So it's like a double whammy.
Right. Then there's glycation, where sugar molecules attach to proteins and make them not work properly.
Okay.
Fructose speeds up this process, which might contribute to cell damage, aging, and even problems with thinking and memory.
Got it. So fructose is basically making our cells age faster.
You could say that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this toxin called methylglyoxal that's produced when our body breaks down fructose.
Another one.
I know it's a lot, but this toxin can also cause damage to our cells.
So we've got mitochondrial dysfunction, glycation, methylglyoxal. No wonder sugar is linked to so many mental health issues.
Right. It's really complicated, but the evidence is building that too much sugar can really mess with our brains.
Oh, so much to think about.
And we're just getting started.
I know, right?
Up next, we'll explore how sugar affects those critical chemical messengers in our brains, neurotransmitters.
Neurotransmitters are fascinating. They're like the brain's communication network, controlling everything from our mood and behavior to how well we think.
Yeah, they're super important. And I have a feeling sugar is involved here too.
You bet. It disrupts them in all sorts of ways.
Okay, so tell me, how does it mess with these neurotransmitters?
Well, to understand that, you need to know about the glutamate-GABA cycle.
Okay, glutamate and GABA.
Glutamate is like the gas pedal in your brain. It gets things going.
Okay,
And GABA acts like the brakes. It calms things down.
so they work together to balance brain activity.
Exactly. Like a car, you need both to function properly.
I see. So too much glutamate might make me feel anxious, and too much GABA would make me sluggish.
Exactly. And research shows that fructose can mess up this balance by blocking an enzyme that turns glutamate into GABA.
Interesting.
So you can end up with too much glutamate, and that can cause problems like anxiety.
Wow. So sugar's impact goes way beyond just a quick energy crash.
Yeah.
It can actually change our brain chemistry.
And it's not just neurotransmitters either.
There's more.
Oh, yeah. Next up, we're talking about these things called trophic factors. They're essential for the brain to grow, develop, and function properly.
Trophic factors.
Huh.
I'm all ears.
And you guessed it, sugar impacts these too.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's hear about these trophic factors and how sugar messes with them. Trophic factors, they sound important. Can you break those down for me?
Sure, think of them like fertilizer for the brain.
Right.
They're proteins that are essential for the brain to grow, develop, and function properly.
So they basically keep our brains healthy.
Exactly. Leptin, insulin, and BDNF are some of the key players.
Or BDNF.
Yeah, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, but we'll get to that one later.
Okay.
Trophic factors help grow new brain cells, strengthen the connections between neurons, and even protect the brain from damage.
So they're like the support system that keeps our brains running smoothly.
That's a good way to put it, but as we've been seeing, sugar has an impact here too.
Figures. I was wondering when sugar would make an appearance.
Well, research has linked ultra-processed foods, which are often loaded with sugar, to things like psychological distress and depression.
Really?
Yeah, and it's probably because of their effects on these trophic factors we're talking about.
It's like we're feeding our brains junk food instead of giving them what they really need to thrive.
I like that analogy. It's a good way to think about it. Ultra-processed foods often lack the nutrients our brains need, and they're full of things that disrupt this delicate balance.
And that's where things like insulin resistance come in, right?
Yes, insulin resistance is a big one.
Okay, remind me what that is again.
So it's basically when your cells become less responsive to insulin.
Insulin, the hormone that regulates blood sugar.
Exactly, and this leads to a buildup of glucose in the blood.
Got it.
One of the things that happens with insulin resistance is that it disrupts leptin signaling.
Leptin, isn't that the hormone that tells us we're full?
It is, but it's actually more than just a fullness signal. It's also a key brain growth factor.
Oh, wow.
And those chronically elevated insulin levels we see with insulin resistance, they can block leptin from communicating with the brain.
That's not good.
No, it's not. It can lead to problems with brain development and function.
So it's like the brain is not getting the message that it's full.
Yeah, and that can affect everything from how much we eat to how well our brains actually work.
It's all connected.
It really is. And then there's BDNF, remember?
Brain-derived neurotrophic factor,
That's the one. This one's thing important for learning memory and mood.
like keeping us sharp and happy.
You got it. But here's the thing. Both low serotonin levels, which we talked about before, and high insulin levels can mess with BDNF production.
So it's like a double whammy: sugar, depletes serotonin, and raises insulin, and both of those sabotage this BDNF stuff.
You're getting it. And this disruption in trophic factor signaling is thought to be a major reason why we see a connection between metabolic syndrome and mental health issues.
Metabolic syndrome, that's the combination of obesity, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Right?
Yeah, it got it.
Not just bad for our bodies, but for our brains too.
It's all connected. We're seeing more and more that metabolic syndrome is a major player in both physical and mental health issues.
Well, it's pretty scary stuff.
It is, but the good news is we're learning more about these connections every day.
Okay, so we've covered mitochondria and neurotransmitters, trophic factors.
We have.
Anything else in the brain that sugar can hijack?
Oh yeah, we can't forget about the brain's reward system.
The reward system?
You know, the pathway that's really involved in addiction?
Oh yeah, the dopamine pathway, the pleasure and reward center.
Exactly, and I bet you can guess where this is going.
Sugar's involved somehow.
You bet. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that's key for motivation, pleasure, and reward-seeking behavior.
So all the good stuff.
Right. Well, Dr. Lustig's research has shown that sugar, just like alcohol and drugs, can trigger the release of dopamine in the brain.
Really?
It can lead to cravings and even addictive behavior.
Are you saying sugar can be addictive?
It's complicated, but the research does suggest that sugar can hijack the brain's reward system in a way that's similar to drug addiction.
It's kind of crazy to think about it that way.
It is. And you know how we give babies sugar water to calm them down?
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about that in the context of addiction.
Wow. I never thought about it like that.
And then there was that milkshake study by Eric Stice where they did brain imaging and found that the sugar in the milkshakes, not the fat, triggered the release of dopamine in the brain's pleasure center.
So it's not just the taste or the creamy texture that's rewarding, it's the sugar itself.
Exactly. It's hitting that pleasure center. And here's another interesting thing. Fructose doesn't make you feel as full as glucose does.
Interesting.
So people tend to eat more fructose, which can lead to more cravings and overeating.
It's like a vicious cycle. We crave sugar, it makes us feel good, but we don't feel full, so we just want more and more.
That's one of the big reasons why sugar is so problematic. It messes up our natural hunger cues and makes it really hard to control how much we eat.
This makes me think about the link between sugar and dementia, which is a really scary disease.
It's definitely a concern.
So is there actually a connection there?
It's complicated, but there's definitely a link between obesity and dementia.
Right. But both fat and sugar can contribute to obesity.
They can, but there was a study where they found that while both fat and sugar can cause obesity in rats, only sugar seemed to lead to problems with thinking and memory.
Wow, that's fascinating. So why would sugar have this unique effect on the brain?
One reason seems to be the effect of insulin on the brain.
Insulin again.
Yep. High insulin levels, often caused by eating too much sugar, can interfere with the brain's ability to protect itself from oxidative stress.
And oxidative stress is like rust forming on our cells, right? It causes damage over time.
Exactly, a great analogy. And there was research done by Dr. Antonio Conbit that showed a correlation between insulin resistance and a decrease in the size of the hippocampus.
The hippocampus, isn't that the part of the brain that's crucial for memory?
That's the one. A shrinking hippocampus is one of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease.
So are you saying the insulin resistance, often caused by sugar, might be contributing to the brain changes that cause dementia?
It's a disturbing thought, but the research is definitely pointing in that direction.
This is a lot to take in. We've gone from sugar, hijacking our reward system, to potentially contributing to dementia.
It's a lot, I know.
But there's even more to the story, right?
You bet. We haven't even talked about the potential link between sugar and behavioral problems like aggression and impulsivity.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing about the Twinkie defense where a lawyer tried to blame his client's actions on eating too much junk food.
It didn't work in court, but there's actually more and more evidence that what we eat can influence our behavior.
Didn't there used to be all these commercials about sugar making kids hyper?
I remember those. And while sugar might give you a quick burst of energy, it's not actually making kids hyper.
Okay, but what about aggression?
Well, there was a study that found a link between drinking sugary sodas and increased violence and aggression in teenagers.
Oh, wow.
And while it's just a correlation, it does make you wonder about the impact of sugar on young people, especially during those crucial developmental years.
It's not just teenagers either, right?
Yeah.
Haven't there been studies showing similar behavioral problems in younger kids who drink a lot of soda?
Yeah, there have, and these findings are definitely concerning.
It seems like everything is connected when we start talking about sugar and the brain.
It really is. And speaking of connections, we can't forget about the gut-brain axis.
The gut-brain axis.
That's the intricate relationship between the trillions of bacteria living in our gut and our brain. the microbiome.
Oh, yeah, the microbiome. We talked about that earlier. I'm ready to dive deeper into that.
It's a fascinating area of research. The gut microbiome is like this huge city of microorganisms, and it's involved in so much more than just digestion.
So it's not just about keeping our digestion running smoothly.
Nope, it actually plays a crucial role in how our brains develop and function, affecting everything from neurotransmitter production to our immune system.
So a healthy gut equals a healthy brain.
Exactly, but I bet you can guess what might not be so good for the gut.
Sugar?
Bingo research suggests that fructose can actually harm the gut microbiome.
Seriously?
Yeah, it can lead to a decrease in those good bacteria and an increase in the harmful ones.
So it's like sugar is disrupting the balance of power in our gut, tipping the scales in favor of the bad guys.
That's a good way to put it, and this can have a domino effect on the brain.
Like what?
Well, a messed up microbiome can lead to something called leaky gut, where the lining of your gut becomes more permeable.
Leaky gut. Oh, that doesn't sound good.
It's not. It means that toxins and bacteria can leak out of your gut and into your bloodstream.
And that causes problems.
It can lead to inflammation throughout the body, including in the brain, and we know that inflammation is a big factor in many mental health conditions.
It's like a chain reaction.
Mm.
Sugar disrupts the microbiome, which leads to leaky gut and inflammation, and ultimately impacts the brain.
It's a cascade of events, and it doesn't stop there. A disrupted microbiome can also increase the risk of autoimmune diseases.
Autoimmune diseases, so the body is attacking itself.
Exactly, and some autoimmune diseases like lupus can directly affect the brain, causing a bunch of neurological and psychiatric symptoms.
Oh, wow, I didn't realize that.
And then there's this condition called PANDAS.
Pandas.
Yeah, pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders associated with streptococcal infections.
That's a mouthful. What is pandas?
It's basically when kids develop OCD tics and other neuropsychiatric symptoms really suddenly after a strep infection.
Oh, wow. So the strep infection triggers an autoimmune response that affects the brain.
That's the idea. And here's where sugar comes back into the picture. Research has shown that fructose can actually help harmful bacteria grow, including Group A strep, the one that causes strep throat.
So are you saying that sugar could potentially increase the risk of this pandas thing?
It's a possibility that needs more research, but the connection is sugar messes with the microbiome. A messed up microbiome can increase the risk of autoimmune diseases, and some of those diseases can directly impact the brain.
This is heavy stuff. We've gone from sugar affecting gut bacteria to potentially increasing the risk of a serious brain disorder.
I know it can be overwhelming, but it really highlights how interconnected our bodies are.
It's amazing and a little bit scary.
It is. Everything is connected, and the gut microbiome is a crucial part of this whole system.
So what we eat really does affect our gut health, which in turn affects our brain health.
Exactly. And that brings us to the end of part 2 of our deep dive.
It's been quite a journey so far.
It has. We've covered so much ground, from mitochondrial dysfunction to neurotransmitter imbalances, and now this incredible gut-brain connection.
And the common thread through it all is sugar.
It seems to be everywhere, and it's impacting our brains in ways we're just starting to understand.
But the good news is we have the power to make changes, right?
Absolutely. We're not powerless. We can choose to eat real whole foods, limit sugar, and nourish our gut microbiome.
It's empowering to know we can actually do something to support our mental well-being.
Exactly. Knowledge is power. The more we understand about how sugar affects our brains, the better choices we can make.
I'm definitely feeling a little overwhelmed by all this information, but also motivated to make some changes in my life.
That's great to hear.
Before we wrap up this part, is there anything else that really stood out to you in all this research?
You know, as we were going through all this, I kept thinking about the question of personal responsibility versus the power of the food environment.
Oh, you mean?
Well, we've talked about making informed choices and reading labels, but what about all the other factors at play? You know, the marketing, the availability of junk food, the fact that sugar is everywhere.
It's like we're swimming in a sea of sugar. It's hard to escape.
Exactly. So while personal responsibility is important, we also need to think about advocating for policies that make healthier options more accessible and affordable, and maybe we need to start pushing back against those marketing tactics that make us crave all this junk.
It's a big problem, but it's important to talk about it.
It is, and that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately.
This whole deep dive has really changed how I think about food.
I'm glad to hear that.
We always talk about food as fuel for our bodies, but we don't often think about it as fuel for our minds.
It's a powerful shift in perspective. Food is more than just calories. It's the building blocks for our cells. the energy for our mitochondria, and the raw materials for those neurotransmitters we talked about.
It's like we wouldn't put cheap gas in a fancy sports car, so why would we do that to our brains?
Exactly. We need to pay attention to the quality of the fuel we're putting into our bodies and minds.
But our brains are wired to crave sugar. It's like a primal instinct, survival mechanism from back in the day.
It makes sense back then sugar was scarce and it meant you found a good source of energy, but today it's everywhere and it's causing all these problems.
So it's like our brains haven't caught up to modern times.
We're still programmed to seek out sugar, but now it's everywhere and it's having all these unintended consequences.
So how do we break free from this sugar trap?
Yeah.
How do we rewire our brains to want healthier foods?
It's definitely a challenge, but it is possible.
Okay, so how do we do it?
Well, one thing that works is to gradually reduce your sugar intake. Start by cutting back on sugary drinks, desserts, and processed snacks.
So slow and steady wins the race.
Exactly. Making big changes all at once usually doesn't work.
I can relate to that.
By gradually cutting back on sugar, you give your taste buds and your brain time to adjust.
That makes sense.
And while you're cutting back on sugar, focus on eating more of those brain-boosting foods we talked about.
You mean like fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds?
Exactly. And don't forget about lean proteins and healthy fats. Those are important too.
It's all about giving our brains the nutrients they need to thrive.
And don't forget about water.
Water!
It's essential for brain function. Make sure you're drinking enough throughout the day.
Right, we can't let our brains get dehydrated.
And here's another important one. Prioritize sleep.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that you're always talking about sleep.
Well, it's crucial for brain health when we sleep. Our brains consolidate memories, clear out toxins, and repair themselves.
So sleep is non-negotiable.
Exactly. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep each night. It makes a huge difference.
Okay, I'm convinced no more skimping on sleep. But back to sugar. What about those times when you just really crave it?
Mindfulness is key. Pay attention to your body's signals. Are you actually hungry, or are you just bored, stressed, or tired?
So before I grab that cookie, I should stop and think for a minute.
Exactly. Sometimes just acknowledging the craving can help it pass.
Interesting.
And if you do decide to have something sweet, really savor it. Pay attention to the taste, the texture, the smell. Mindful eating can help you enjoy it more and prevent overeating.
I like that it's about being present and intentional with our eating.
And remember, food is meant to be enjoyed. It's not about deprivation or guilt. It's about making choices that nourish your body and your mind.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of the connection between food and mental health.
I'm glad to hear that it's an amazing field and we're learning more all the time.
I'm definitely going to be more mindful of what I eat.
That's great.
And I'm really curious to see what future research reveals about this incredible link between food and our minds.
Me too. It's an exciting journey of discovery.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it informative and inspiring.
It's been a pleasure.
Remember, the power to change your brain and your life is in your hands and on your plate. Until next time, stay curious. It's like trying to quit smoking, but you're stuck in a room full of smokers.
That's such a good analogy. It's tough to resist temptation when it's all around you.
Yeah, so it's not just about making good choices as individuals.
Right. We also need to think bigger picture. Advocating for policies that make healthy food more accessible, and maybe even pushing back against those marketing campaigns that make us crave junk food in the first place.
It's a big challenge for sure, but I think it's a conversation worth having.
I agree.
This whole deep dive has really shifted my perspective on food.
In what way?
Well, we always talk about food as fuel for our bodies,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't often stop to think about it as fuel for our minds, too.
I know what you mean. It's a pretty powerful realization.
Food is more than just calories.
It really is. It provides the building blocks for our cells. It gives energy to our mitochondria, and it's the raw material for those neurotransmitters we were talking about.
It's like we wouldn't put cheap gas in a fancy sports car.
Right.
So why would we do that to our brains?
Exactly. We have to be mindful of the quality of the fuel we're giving our bodies, and especially our brains.
But the thing is, our brains are wired to crave sugar. It's like a primal instinct,
It makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint.
How so?
Well, way back when sugar was scarce and finding it meant you'd hit the jackpot in terms of energy.
Okay, so it was a good thing back then.
Right. But today, it's a different story. Sugar is everywhere and it's cheap.
And our brains haven't quite caught up to that.
It's like our wiring is outdated. We're still programmed to seek out sugar, but now it's leading to all these health problems.
So how do we break free from this sugar trap?
It's not easy, but it's definitely possible.
What can we do?
Well, one of the most effective strategies is to slowly cut back on sugar.
Okay.
Start by reducing sugary drinks, desserts, processed snacks, things like that.
So take it slow and steady.
Exactly. Big sudden changes are usually hard to stick with.
I can definitely relate to that.
By gradually cutting back, you give your taste buds and your brain a chance to adjust.
That makes sense.
And while you're reducing sugar, focus on eating more of those brain-boosting foods we talked about.
Fruits, veggies, nuts and seeds, all that good stuff.
Exactly. And lean proteins, healthy fats, those are important too.
It's all about giving our brains what they need to function at their best.
And another thing, don't forget about water.
Water.
It's so important for brain function. Make sure you're drinking enough throughout the day.
So stay hydrated.
And here's one more. Prioritize sleep.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that you're always advocating for sleep.
Well, it's crucial. Sleep is when our brains consolidate memories, clear out toxins, and repair themselves.
So sleep is non-negotiable.
It should be aim for 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep each night. It makes a world of difference for your brain.
Okay, you convinced me no more skimping on sleep.
Good.
But back to sugar. What about those moments when a craving hits?
Those are tough, but mindfulness can really help.
Mindfulness.
Yeah, pay attention to your body's signals. Are you truly hungry, or are you just bored, stressed, maybe tired?
So before I reach for that cookie, I should stop and ask myself, am I really hungry?
Exactly. Sometimes just recognizing the craving can be enough to make it go away.
I have to try that.
And if you do decide to have something sweet, really savor it. Pay attention to the taste, the texture, the smell. Mindful eating can help you enjoy it more and prevent you from overdoing it.
I like that it's about being more present and intentional with our eating.
That's it. And remember, food is supposed to be enjoyable. It's not about deprivation or guilt. It's about making choices that nourish your body and mind.
This has been a truly eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I have a much better understanding of the connection between food and mental health now.
I'm so glad to hear that it's an incredible field and we're learning more every day.
I'm definitely going to be thinking more carefully about what I eat.
That's great to hear.
And I'm really excited to see what future research uncovers about this amazing connection between food and our brains.
Me too. It's a fascinating journey of discovery.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it informative and inspiring.
It's been my pleasure.
And remember, the power to change your brain and your life is in your hands and on your plate. Until next time, stay curious.